Hi everybody, and welcome to the next edition of Match Memories. I think it's number 12. And today I'm going to do something a little bit different. What I'm going to do is recap on everything that I feel that I've learned. Not just learned, but things that have stood me in good stead and that I think could really be an advantage to others. Obviously it's been quite a long journey since I broke into the international scene back in 1998, full World Championships, but obviously before then for home internationals and matches like that. And I have definitely learned along the way, and I still am. And that's the most important thing. That's the first thing that I want to talk to. I've got a whole host of things that I want to go through, things that I've learned, things that I still want to get better at. But I've got a whole list of things that I want to go through for today's talk. So we're not concentrating on a venue or a match. We're going to go over all the things and have a little update just on the things that I think that, are very, very, very important, especially if you're looking at fishing, festivals, matches like this, that and everything else. And if you're lucky enough to fish World or European Championships, things and ways to go about certain things. So like I say, it's not a match today. And the first thing that I really want to cover, and I think it's something where, I haven't really fallen down in that area myself, but I know people that definitely have, and that's the preparation area. Obviously, when we're talking about these big matches, it's getting to know where the match is first and foremost. If you're lucky enough to have been there before, then that's a fantastic bonus. If not, that's where your network of friends come into it. That's where you've got to start making phone calls, sending texts. Nowadays, it's a lot easier because you just type it into Google or YouTube, and away you go. There's probably videos on a multitude of different venues, and you'd be unlucky not to find something out. But when I first started, the one thing that I did realise definitely people like Stevie did was build a network of friends. Not only a network of friends in different countries, but a network of friends that have got a network of friends in different countries, if that makes sense. People like Milo Colombo, people like John Desk, the list goes on. These people, they know a lot of people, they can get a lot of information, and it's very, very important to have people like this, at your disposal to give you information, especially where preparation's concerned. Because again, like I've said in a lot of the talks, preparation for me is massive. Not only do I want to be prepared and feel like I'm prepared in my mind, but I want to save time when I'm out there. For those of you that have fished in very, very hot conditions, or been away and fished all week, the time just flies, and if you're not careful, you can run out of time. So the more gear and preparation you can do before you go, the more time, and I've always said, and it's something that I stand by, it's important to fish enough, but it's important not to fish too much. And by this I mean you need to give yourself time to, one, obviously recover, especially if it's hot. They're long, long days. And I'm not just talking about the England thing, I'm talking about Whiteacres festivals, I'm talking about Stafford Moor festivals, I'm talking about Irish festivals, I'm talking about a whole host of festivals, even river festivals in England. That you need to go about them and approach them in a very professional manner to get the most out of them, and preparation is definitely one. Because the last thing you want to do is to have a real long day on the bank and have to go back to the room and spend 5 or 6 hours on your gear. As well as trying to fit in a shower, getting cleaned up, a meeting, a meal, obviously then you do need to get your sleep to recharge those batteries ready for the next day, because it can be a very demanding environment, not just physically but mentally. And you do need time away from the fishing to recharge your batteries, but also to prepare physically, mentally, and obviously with your tackle. So when you get the heads up where the venue is, especially if you know it, if you can get some information, prepare as much gear as you can. A lot of the World and European Championships I go on, I don't fish for 3 weeks before. I'm just locked in my tackle room, or I'm out on the lakes, or I'm on a venue that suits, or that's similar in England. I remember one time we fished a canal in Belgium we actually won the Europeans there. And me and Callum, I mean, South Cerney from here is around about 50-55 mile. And me and Callum went there every day for a week fishing a slider, firing ground bait out. It was in the middle, really. It was quite a deep lake, and we met there. And we just made sure that before we even got on that tunnel to go to Belgium, that we had 8 or 10 slider rods made up that were perfect. We had 15 catapults. We had everything. And preparation is key. Preparation, you know, really does stand you in good stead. And, you know, that was just one example where we went on to win European gold. Obviously, the next thing I'd like to talk about is research. And I've sort of touched on that now. You know, use your network of friends. Use your black book. We've spoken about this in the talks I've done. So important that you start making notes. It's never too late to start making notes. Even if you think, do you know what, I'm not, start doing it. Because the things, you know, when you go on a match or you go on a practice session and things are fresh in your head, it's so easy to write things down. Key things, you know, those things that really can make a massive difference. And it's so important that you write it down, because these things can slip your mind. You know, I've had it where, you know, I've gone on venues and I've consulted the black book afterwards to think, you know, and there's things I've missed that have actually cost me. Likewise, you know, like I said, I've been doing that black book for a lot of years now, and, you know, that black book alone is responsible for, you know, many victories and many good results. So vitally important. Again, you know, as far as research is concerned, it's not just what you write down, it's what other people write down. Use your network of friends, use the internet, and just get as much information as possible. Now, I really do want to talk to you about a couple of the things, or there's 3 things in particular I want to talk to you about with that I've learned through the England thing. Number 1 is the way that you mix ground bait. You know, have your mind open to the fact that there's lots of different ground baits and there's lots of different ways to prepare them. You know, you can mix them wet so that they're inert, they go straight to the bottom, don't, you know, really fizz and bubble much. You can mix them really dry so that they make a big cloud, fizz and bubble. And it's amazing how many venues respond to a cloud and how many venues respond to you know, like a hard, inert, doughy sort of ground bait. And if you can get the mix right, you know, I remember when I first got into the World Championships team, I only really mixed my ground bait wet. It's just what I thought was done. You know, having the privilege to spend a week with guys like Alan Scott on and that, who, you know, are brilliant tacticians where ground bait and tactics are concerned. I learned a lot, and that was one thing that, you know, really stood out in my mind when I came back after that week in Croatia, that, you know, there's more than one way to mix ground baits. Since then I've gone on and I've used ground bait dry, soft, I've used it over wetted, I've used lean, like we spoke about in Italy, this Pongo type lean. So it's very important to have your mind open as far as different ways to use the same ground bait. You know, for instance, the Advantage range of ground baits that I use from Dawa, a range that I came up with working closely with Tamas. You know, take for instance the river ground bait. You can use this dry, it will go in, make a cloud, fizz and bubble, or you can add that bit more water and it will go in like an absolute house brick, but it does break up very quick. So that's just a little touch on ground bait. Remember, you know, don't get sort of tunnel vision, don't get trapped in the sort of place of, you know, there's one way to mix ground bait and that's it. You can do a multitude of things with the same ground baits. So always keep that open, because that's a real big advantage if you can put ground bait in sometimes soft, fizzing activity, and that really does draw fish into the swim. The next thing I want to talk about, obviously vitally important, is looking after bait while you're away. Now, obviously, if you're in the privileged position where, you know, you can stay in a hotel, sometimes they'll provide you with a fridge, sometimes there's an outside garage. But keeping bait cool is of utmost importance. Okay, when you're away you can get fresh bait delivered, but when I'm talking about bait like bloodworm, joker, pinkies, red worms, you know, there really are ways to look after it, and obviously keeping them cool, dark, you know, dry, that's all massive things, but it's things you learn as you go away. Bloodworm wise, again, I've learnt valuable lessons through, you know, having to look after bait and not doing it right. Again, you know, I have to say that Alan is the man for looking after. I think I said it in one of my match memories before, that I think he's got a magic little potion that he drops in the water and they just become bigger and livelier. But having watched Alan, you know, like, the main thing is, especially when you're staying in a hotel, is to test the water. A lot of the water out there can have, you know, various different chemicals in, which just isn't good for bloodworm. And the way to do it is just put a little bit of water in a tray, put a few bloodworm in, leave them an hour, and if they're okay, then go for it. If not, sometimes we have to bring water back from the venue, which involves, you know, filling old drink bottles up with water from the venue and bringing it back. So always make sure that the water isn't going to kill the bloodworm. As far as all the other baits concerned, you know, keeping it cool, like I've said, either ice packs, fridges, things like that. Just go out of your way, because, you know, without decent bait, everything else, you know, really sort of dwindles into insignificance, really. It's so important that you have very, very good bait. You know, you can do all the preparation you want, you can know whatever it is you want, you know, you can have all the best information, but if what you're putting on the hook's no good, you're fighting a losing battle straight away. So always go out of your way to make sure that your bait is of utmost, you know, just fresh, lively, and so on and so on and so on. One thing, again, I want to touch on while we're talking about bait is the importance of red worms. The guys that go to Ireland will know this, but not just there. I've been to places like Serbia, Italy, where they just get bites, you know, especially skimmers and bream. They absolutely love them. Those big catfish as well. So always go out your way and try and get some proper red worms. There's lots of people that do get them. I've got a couple of good friends, Stretch in particular, that never lets me down when I need red worms, and it's so important that, you know, you have quality bait, and that's a bait that I will go out of my way to get, or Stretch will go out of his way to get me. But, you know, moving on from that, another subject that I think is vitally important, and it's something that, you know, not only do you do every single time you go fishing, but there's different ways to do it, and you have to get it right, a little bit like the ground bait, and that is plumbing up. For those of you that have watched all the match memories, I have encountered quite a few venues where the bottom's up and down. There's a lot of boulders, a lot of underwater obstacles, and it's very hard to get a mental picture of what's going on underneath the water. And you might already have noticed as well, for those of you that read any of my articles or watch any of my DVDs, I'm always looking for the nicest bit of bottom in my peg to present the bait, because I know the fish are going to feed there. So plumbing up is of utmost importance, but a lot of things ripple into this. And the one thing that I wanted to talk about when plumbing up is to get your setup right. For those of you that watched the match memories on Finland, it was a case of getting to your peg, your box down, your side trays, all your pole rigs up, your rollers up, and giving yourself the most amount of time to plumb up and make the decision where you're going to fish in your peg. And, you know, one of the most important things for me when plumbing up is done before I've even got a plummet on or a rig on, and that's how quick I get set up, and that gives me, you know, as much time as I need to make the right decisions. You know, I can plumb up again if I'm not sure, I can have a little look somewhere else in my peg, I can go further, I can come closer, I can really analyse it, and like I say, get that mental picture of the underground layout of my peg. Vitally important that you do this. I've seen so many people rush this bit of their fishing, get it wrong, and it obviously ultimately ends up costing them. Now, a massive thing in competition fishing, this is the next thing I want to talk about, is obviously keeping your eyes, your ears open to what others are doing. Very important. Again, I've mentioned it all the way through Match Memories, that things that we've given away that have cost us, things that we've seen and gleaned information off of others. So you've always got to have, you know, your ear to the ground as far as trying to find out information while you're there. But watching other people, asking other people, you know, what they've done, what they've fished, how far they fished, you know, how much they've fed. Okay, a lot of people might, you know, spin you a bit of a yarn, but, you know, as long as you get the rough information, that's the most important thing. So don't be afraid, you know, to, you know, if it's not going your way, to just sit there on your box a little while and just actually watch someone that is catching and try and analyse what they're doing. Very, very, very important. Now, I've just touched on something there, which is the next thing that I want to talk about, which I think is the key. I don't know if it's the key, but it's certainly one of the major keys to unlocking the match fishing puzzle, in my opinion. And that is analysing what you're doing, what other people are doing, and trying to come up with a plan. Now, it's very easy to get lost in you know, fishing's easy when you know exactly how and you know what to do. When other people know how and know what to do and you don't, fishing's the most complicated, you know, sort of annoying thing that you can come across. So trying to analyse and glean information, glean the right information, is vitally, vitally important. Now, not only will I analyse what I've done, I'll analyse what other people have done, and quite often you'll get it where you realise what's gone on and other people don't, even if they're catching fish because of it. So it's very, very important. And again, this goes back to, you know, everything I talk about ripples into the other thing. So what I'm talking about now is analysing it, and this goes right the way back to the presentation. If I go and I'm prepared, I haven't got to go back that night and tie up 20 hooks and 20 rigs and redo 3 elastics, because I've already done all that. But what I can do, I can have a nice shower, I can lay down on my bed, and I can just shut my eyes and I can think and analyse what's gone on. And thinking and giving yourself time away from the actual physical fishing, but just sitting there and thinking about it, analysing it, going over it and over it and over it. Sometimes you can just come up with those little things that make a massive difference. So that all ripples back, like I say, to the preparation side. Giving yourself time to relax and prepare mentally for these big events is very, very, very important. The next thing, or the next thing that I feel is vitally important, and again, you know, like, you only get to see this little view of my tackle room, the workbench, and everything else, but is keeping the tackle. Now, I've still got, you know, I haven't been to Whiteacres now for probably a good 10 years, but I've still got all my porf rigs, I've still got all the floats. I keep the tackle because I don't know when I'd either go back there or go somewhere very, very similar. And it's vitally important that, you know, you get nice little storage. If you go to a venue and you've got rigs and you've got floats and you've got hooks that are specifically for this venue, put them away, keep them, because you never know when they're going to come into play. You know, 2 or 3 times in the last few years, probably 30 years, you know, I've sort of come back from a venue and got like 10 of these, I don't know, sliding bolo floats, let's say. Thought, never going to use them again. And just thrown them on the side. They've got damaged, a little bit beat up, threw up. And then all of a sudden we're going back there. And it's like, oh no, I haven't. So I've really learnt the lesson of storing gear. And sort of, you know, not hoarding to an extent, but I suppose it is. You know, I look around here and I've just got tubes of wagglers up to 50 grams and right the way down to 1 gram, and flat floats from, you know, half a gram to 80 grams. But you never know when you're going to need it. So always make sure that, you know, you go out of your way to not only store gear, but if you do get it, you know, obviously little niche things that are slightly different. You know, You know, you get different floats, you get different hooks, you get different main lines, little tiny things, right the way down to even rods. You know, I've got some rods here that I've hardly ever used, but they're perfect. I've got some 15-foot Darwin long distance waggler rods. You know, and only a few years ago we ended up on the Ostolato Canal having to cast 40-50 gram wagglers across, and I've got the dead right rods. Now, I originally got those rods about 12 or 14 years ago. Didn't use them for what I actually got them for, but I kept them. You know, they're up on my shelf, and I kept them, and away you go. You know, you never ever know when you're going to need this stuff. Like I say, I've got a few little things written down here now that I just want to, you know, go through. And, you know, shotting is another one. Again, a lot of people, you know, will, different shotting patterns, do they catch your fish? Yes, they do. But always stick, and it's something that I've learned, stick to the ones that you're happy with. The ones that you know that work, the ones that you know that don't tangle. You know, there's various shotting patterns I tend to stick to. I've got a staggered bolt that Tam has showed me. Absolutely love that rig. And I know everyone that I've shown, people like James Dent, Matt Goffrey, all these guys that I've shown, absolutely love that shotting pattern. And I think they pretty much use it exclusively now. So little things like, and it's something that I've got written down here, you know, trusting your own judgment. So important. You know, building confidence in the fact that, you know, well, this is what I think. And, you know, a few times in my early international career, I had a couple of bad results, and one of them was on Lake Mucknow. And I can remember the plan was we fired out 20 balls of groundbait at the start, then we fed leam over the top, on a slider line I'm talking about. And I can remember the first day, fired out 20 balls of groundbait, chucked the slider out, caught a skimmer, caught a nice big roach, caught another roach, caught a skimmer. Then it all went funny, so started firing this leam in and couldn't get a bite. And I'm thinking, they're coming to that groundbait. They came to groundbait, they didn't come to this leam. And I sat there for a good 2 hours thinking I should be feeding groundbait instead of leam. Dick Clegg, who was a manager back then, he came along and I explained the situation. He's like, well, why aren't you feeding groundbait if that's what you think? Started feeding groundbait. Caught a few fish towards the end and ended up 10th out of about 30. And really kicked myself for not following my own gut instinct. But it's things like that. You know, sometimes you've got to make a mistake to make you appreciate and make you sort of realise, you know, where you went wrong. You know, and it's so important. I can remember Alan saying, once, you know, the best way to know how to do it right is to do it wrong. And to be honest, that's probably one of the truest sayings. With feeding, with plumbing up, with distances, with tactics, everything. It's so easy, you know, like, it's almost easier to find out how to do it right when you do it completely wrong. You know, if you do it half right, you're never too sure. But if you do it completely wrong, you know. For instance, and you know, this is the route we go down quite a bit when we're fishing as a team, whether it's domestically with Darwin Dorking when we're practicing, but more so with the England team when we're sat there and we're practicing. People will on purpose do it wrong. If we think a black dry ground bait is dead right, someone will be using a light wet ground bait, you know, just to sort of completely the opposite, so we can, you know, dismiss it totally and move on with the tactics. So important. And again, it's things that I've seen. You know, I can remember Alan Scott on once on one of the first internationals I fished, which was a home international at Home Pierpont. He turned up and we were all sat there fishing and catching some fish. He turned up and balled it, and I can remember these balls going in like concrete, ba-doom, ba-doom, ba-doom. And he sat there for an hour and a half and didn't catch anything. And I'm like, that's Alan Scott on, you know, like. Then all of a sudden he balled it in, and you could hear these balls like almost clapping as they hit the water, where they're breaking up in a big cloud. Dropped his rig in, caught one every chuck for an hour and went home. So he knew exactly how to feed it. They didn't come to the hard ground bait. He put the soft ground bait in, dropped his rig in, started catching. He came back for the weekend and absolutely annihilated the match both days, and actually won the He has won the European Championships, but won the home international at home Pierpont. So it just goes to show, you know, that practicing is, you know, vitally important, and you have to go about it the right way. I see too many people, you know, like I've been fishing with people for years, that you go practicing and all they want to do is beat you. That's all they want to do. Oh, I've caught more than you. But for me, practicing is about finding out how to catch the fish when it's important that you catch them. It's not important that I, you know, catch them in practice. That's why quite often when you know, it's different when you're fishing for your place in the England team, but quite often I'll get up and, you know, have a walk along. I've done it in Hungary. 2 years ago we actually ended up second, or 3 years ago, and we were you know, we couldn't make hide nor hair of it, and this guy catching 2 or 3 to my left, I got up and watched what he did, came back, started doing it myself, thought it was really good, passed the information on to the team, and away you go. I just want to end this one again slightly different. I'm going to carry on with the match memory, so, you know, for the die-hard fans, please don't worry. I just felt for this one it was very, very important just to recap. I didn't want to completely just lose and forget about the real important things that have stood me in good stead. And for those of you that go away on festivals, or lucky enough to represent your country, or you know, even Whiteacres, you know, river, it doesn't matter where you go, but preparation and the way you go about it, if it's done right, it can make it a lot easier for you. And by that I just mean, you know, staying in a nice place, you know, looking after your bait, you know, and on and on and on and on, right the way down to how you think about it and how you prepare before you go. And I just want to end on this by saying, you know, a lot of people feel, you know, to stay at the top of match fishing you have to fish every day, and you do, and that's very, very important. But if you're going on these big events, give yourself time before you go to prepare. So important. But that feeling of when you go and you're absolutely prepared, everything's done, you know, you virtually feel unstoppable, and with a little bit of luck and a few good draws, you probably will be unstoppable. But until the next one, like I say, don't worry, the match memories are going to continue. But this was something I've been thinking about doing for, you know, a few weeks now, just to recap on everything that's vitally important. So I hope you're out there catching a few fish, enjoying the weather. It's absolutely glorious. It's absolutely scorching in my tackle room today. I'm going to get out of here because I can feel myself sweating up already. So until the next one, take care, tight lines, and I'll see you on the bank very soon. Bye-bye.